charts, but there's something called monitoring charts. So if you click on monitoring charts, you can see there are few chart tabs up there. And one of the things we wanted to do, because everything we have seen in our experience is very table driven, very downloads driven. People want to download those things and put it into Excel and things. And one thing, in my opinion, is a lot of business people could actually benefit from is having some familiarity with some, understanding of charts, and that could make it actually very easy to see things, visualize things. There's an English saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I think we are not utilizing that picture enough. And I think a lot of people initially struggle with, because they're used to use these spreadsheets and PDFs for like 20 years. But in my opinion, I think once you get used to, like, even if you spend half an hour, and you will feel very, very comfortable of using charts. And I think we are trying our best to create those such a dynamic and interactive charts to look at it. So there's a chart on the screen that is one of the examples. And it says basically it's a sales chart, right? So very simple. It's a sales of each category. I'm going to leave this little box here at the bottom. It's a sales of each category. And as you can see that at the bottom, it says weeks. It's a different weeks here. And if you hover on them, you can also see what category they represent, right? So of course, this is a dummy data. If you want to select particular category that you are interested in, you can of course go select any of those things. You can, let's talk about that in a minute, but you can see that over time. The cool thing about this chart is that, let's say drug always consistent to be a big category. And if you want to get rid of that drug, and if you want to see everything else in a larger scale, you can simply click on drug, and the chart will readjust without drug, right? So let's put it back on. Let's say I only want to see surgical, for example, right? So if I click on all categories, and if I unclick on surgical, I can see the only sales I have made in surgical was the last week, right? Like let's take a look at FMCG. Okay, so I was not selling FMCG, but suddenly I sold a lot of FMCG. Of course, this is again, one more time, this is dummy data, so it of course doesn't have to make sense. It's just to give you example how easy it is for you to click and filter and process that data visually very easily without actually taking this to the Excel and taking filtering, applying, and then summing them up and all that stuff. It's very, very easy to play around. So if you go to nutraceutical, okay, there were 2 weeks I did not sell nutraceutical. Suddenly I'm selling a lot of nutraceutical. Same thing, generic. And you can have multiple unlocked, right? You can have like this. You can keep adding them. You can do anything you want, really. So this is like a basic chart. Like I said, you can also go and select stuff here as well if you want. By default, it will show you top 10 categories, but if you have more than 10 categories, which a lot of our customers do, they can select anything they want from here. Now, this is where it gets interesting. This is what I really want to show, which is a little more complicated. So this is just a regular, right? Like the regular sales. And if you see on the y-axis here, it's a amount in lakhs. So it's just like 60,000, 0.6 means 60,000 rupees. But if you see, there's another drop down called normalize. What does that mean? So let's say, every day, every week, the sales is different, right? Sometimes you make 3 lakhs rupees sale, 5 lakhs rupees sale, 6 lakhs rupees sale. And that's why the data is going to be always distorted across each week. But you want to see things in proportion, in proportion. Let's say if our sales was consistent each and every week, and then how my different categories are giving me in terms of different results. So for example, these 2 weeks were very slow. Maybe it's a holiday, maybe something else, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's a dummy data. But because of that, I'm not being able to figure out whether my contribution to overall sales by a particular category was how big or small it is. And that is where this normalize comes in. So if you click on normalize, right, you click on go, all the charts will be normalized to 100%. So if you see now, there is no rupees on the left side, it's all 100%. But now you can see the proportionate contribution to the overall sales. So right, so now because that every chart is the same height, 100%, you can see the things proportionally. So FMCG contributed 47% of sales for that particular week, whereas drug contributed only 33%. However, the drug here was 58% and OTC was 38%. So Okay. I'm sorry, it's a dummy data. It doesn't make any make much of a difference, but we try to create a random numbers here so that we can give some examples. But normalize basically takes care of all the difference of sales over week so that you can actually compare the categories with other categories across the weeks. So this is one reason. And then of course the last one is a difference. So if you want to see, you know, which category contributed more over difference over difference. So week minus week two minus week one, week three minus week two. You can also see that. This is not going to make much of sense, but let's take a look at anyway. So as you saw, second week was busy, and then week was busy. And then it will show you a difference between those different weeks. So, you can look at this thing as well if it's a difference. Again, I'm sorry for the dummy data, but this is what the whole idea is. Now, this was just a simple sales, right? So you must be wondering that, okay, Kaushal, so it's a big deal, sales is sales. We can look at sales, we know sales anyway. Um, but this is where it starts getting interesting because if you go to inventory investment, now this is how much money you have invested into your inventory across different categories. And I think this is what people don't look at it, right? It's one thing that people look at sales all the time, but people don't look at how much money I have invested to create that kind of sales, right? So as you can see, drug, of course, is going to contribute the most. Here is the same, everything is same. You can also normalize. This is actually going to make more sense. So let's take a look at the normalization. So I want to normalize. Let's say my inventory was constant. My inventory investment was constant across the board. Now, how am I going to compare? Now I can compare a relative investment into different categories. So you can see generic only considered for 5%. However, if you see OTC was 9.5% and OTC is going down, proportionately speaking, to 7.5%, whereas drug was 74%, 73%, 74%, 70. So pretty consistent, right? Drug, pretty consistent, not much of a difference going on. However, what is this? FMCG. So I did not have FMCG investment at all, and I'm suddenly starting to have some FMCG investment. Again, the regular chart is of course also there as well, which is what we're going to show you in a rupees term. So everything is rupees term now, 3.64 lakhs and so on and so forth. And so this is kind of exactly similar sales, how much money you are making from each category, investment, how much money you have invested into each category. And if you can think about it, the most important thing is for every rupee I have invested, right? How much am I going to get sales? Some people like to do the other way around. Some people like to say, well, based on the sales I have, how many weeks of inventory I'm rolling, right? So every week, how many weeks it takes for me to roll the whole inventory over. And which is what exactly this next chart is going to show us. So this chart is showing us that, you know, in order for me to roll over my inventory, it takes me about 3.6 weeks, right? So basically the calculation is somewhat simplifying. I'm somewhat simplifying. It's a little complicated than that, but I'm going to simplify that. So let's say if I have invested, you know, 3.61 rupees or 3.61 lakh rupees into my inventory, and if my weekly sales was 1 lakh, that's what this ratio is. So for generating 1 lakh rupees weekly sales, how much money I have invested in my stock. So of course, the less is better, right? I want to invest less money to generate the same amount of sales. Similarly here, look at this. I mean, of course, this is a dummy data. It used to take 71 weeks just to roll over my inventory. Of course, the lower is better. You are shooting for lower. Now, I know what you're all thinking. You're basically saying this is for my all inventory. But how do I know which category is actually not performing well, right? What if I am really doing well with my drugs, but I'm not really doing well with my OTC? So here you can drill down on any particular um, category, and it will recreate that chart automatically. So if you can see, my drug turnover is actually a little higher. So actually, I'm not doing that great on a drug yet. You can go to something else. You can go to, I don't know, nutraceuticals, for example. Let's see what that looks like. So even that's not good, right? So there has to be some other category that are doing very well to compensate that average. But overall, basically, to put it simply, it takes about 3.61 weeks for you to completely roll over your inventory. If you ask me what kind of numbers are there in the market, Uh, for pharmacies that are in metro cities like Mumbai, for example, they are very, very efficient with their space because rents are very expensive in Mumbai, and then the distributors also deliver them more often. People get away with any time 4 to 6 weeks. 6 weeks is not bad actually, but some people I've seen, doing really well in terms of their job and managing the pharmacy up to 4 weeks. If you are in a remote area, tier two, tier three, where distributors don't deliver couple times a day or once a day even, then of course you have to stock things up in order to maintain your sales. Um, it could be 8 weeks to 10 weeks, but anything about 10 weeks, I think that is where you should start be concerned about your inventory investment, and you should really drill down onto which category is not performing well. If you're doing anything below six, I congratulate you. I think you are doing a phenomenal job at managing your pharmacy very well in terms of not losing the sales and yet having a minimum investment into your categories into your inventory. So this is one way of our way of doing things. The next time we also want to expand into this thing. So sales is another thing, but then some people say, well, yeah, but what about the margins? What if there is a category which does not move much, right? But the margins are pretty juicy in there, right? For example, surgicals. Surgicals don't move often, but surgicals have good margins in there. So we are actually trying to work on one more report based on somewhat similar. Instead of sales turnover, it will also look at the profit turnover, like, or the profit on the return investment, like return on investment kind of chart. So we'll introduce that very, very soon. And the last chart that we have right now live, it's called expiry timeline. This is also a very, very simple chart in a way. Everybody talks about like expiry reports for next month and things, and I think people lose a big picture of in my store, what kind of expiries do I have? This is right now only looking at top categories, but across the 4 months. But if you go to four instead of four, you can do 24 months, and it will basically show you the whole investment across different expiry. So right now it's April 24 next month. Most of my expiries are, as you can see, 1.5 year away, right? So you can see, if again, same thing, you can get rid of the drugs and you will say, okay, wow, I just realized that my generic expiries are not actually there, right? My generic expiries are all December 24. And that's actually very important because generics don't get like they don't pay you back in terms of expiry. So you want to be very, very careful about this thing, right? Similarly, you can keep playing around. You can get rid of the generic and something else will pop up. For example, my OTC expiries are quite further, you know. So you can play around, you can figure it out. Of course, you can do 12 months if you don't want to look at the all 24 months. One thing we are also going to introduce in this one is instead of categories, you can look at the same chart across different distributors. So if I'm dealing with a distributor and I want to know what kind of expiries do I have for that particular distributor, I can also visualize this. So again, the idea is that for you to start visualizing things, because I think that's going to make it very easy for you to understand your business.